Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
It's really cool. Bonjour, hello, welcome to the Rosbif Rugby Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby, top 14, Pro de National, the national team, the brilliant towns, cities, bars, fans, and everything that makes French rugby so brilliant. Today, including a very special guest, we'll also be interviewing recent Section Paloise second row Steve Cummins. So, yes, bear with us and listen to that. Before that, we have the small issue of the top 14 final. It's been a hell of a journey to get there, and it was a remarkable night. Rob, how are you? Are you still shell shocked, shaken by what we witnessed on Friday night? Because I think at the time we were pretty stuck for words.
Well, Rich, for those that his little podcast awards mug there, Rich, you preemptively. The interview with Steve Cummins went that well.
No, this is my wife's.
London Podcast Festival. I imagine Bordeaux are still pretty shell shocked, and I imagine from what I've seen, Toulouse are in a state of shell shocked, but for a different reason. I think I saw a clip of Tony D kind of strutting around the Place de Capitole yet again, but shades on, tie around the neck. It's
he was getting crowd surfed, but he had his hands behind the back of his head, like in a sort of, like the sort of cartoon relaxed pose where you're just there like this. He's just there like floating along the surface. What a guy! Oh my God! I
feel like he's really embraced the kind of the role he has to play in French and world rugby now. I think he seemed like quite a shy, keeps himself to himself, quiet, just machine type person, and he obviously had that GQ cover or whatever it was where he had the kind of beige dressing gown, which was quite odd, but he seems like he's really embracing being the front man of a swell of popularity in the sport and just being part of a brilliant team and being a brilliant player, and it kind of looks like water off a duck's back now.
In quite an authentic way as well. He doesn't. I know he's done those shoots, but it's all. It seems to be him kind of front and center in his own, as you say, like quiet kind of disciplined way, maybe with a bit of a kind of cheeky edge as per the crowd surfing. But
that clip that you put up on Twitter and I reposted on Instagram of the selfie with the fans where they just lob him the phone. Part of me thinks that's AI. Like, is that being like computer generated? Because if you're a fan, are you lobbing your phone at Antoine Dupont? If you're Antoine Dupont, yes. The answer to this one is probably yes. Are you catching it one-handed, left-handed, just to, and then just take yourself and then just lobbing it back? Like, if you're, it's a lot of trust in the fan to like catch the phone. Like, I've just taken a sick selfie. There you go, catch it.
One of the comments I saw, which really cracked me up, was basically like, "Oh, do iPhones just cost sort of 20, 30 euros in France? Like, we'll just launch it. We'll launch it over the stands, and if it doesn't quite work out, then so be it." Because it's just it's brilliant. If you haven't seen the clip, more Dupont magic.
But I also on Twitter, I also saw a guy I know you're quite a big fan of his work on Twitter. It's AP Cronje, is that him?
South African guy.
Yeah. He was saying you will see the thing about Dupont. So he was kind of saying, I'm not quite sure that he's the GOAT of all time because it's quite hard to compare across eras and across positions because there's so much variety in rugby. But right now he is the best. And his point was not that, the chip and chase is not the best chip and chase you'll ever see. Like, you will see better chip and chases this season, but you're seeing him do these sorts of things that other players can do, but you're seeing them 5 times a game in every single game. Whereas, other players are doing that 1 game in 3 or 1 game in 5, or they're doing it kind of once a game. And it's just the regularity with which he does stuff that is game changing is insane.
It's remarkable, and we said it after the Champions Cup final as well against Leinster, which with hindsight maybe that was a hell of a performance from Leinster, given they were a kick away. Given that Toulouse have just dispatched a very good, albeit slightly hamstrung Bordeaux team by the best part of 60 points, but it's not just. It's the frequency he's doing that. It's just his involvement in the game. It's the amount of stuff he does. And one of the things that kind of really crystallized it for me when we were watching on Friday was he kicked one dead, didn't he, over the dead ball line in the first half, I think. And the commentators remarked, they said, "Oh, a collector's item, a rare mistake from Antoine Dupont, all that sort of thing." He'd already been charged down earlier by the 6 for Bordeaux. And it's not a criticism. It's more just to say, I think you do see him make mistakes, but it's just because of the sheer amount that he's doing in a game. He's having he's having sort of 20, 25, 30 like notable engagements beyond what he's normally doing. And it's almost, I kind of can't quite get my head around how he's fitting it in. It's just he's doing so much on the ball. He does so much in defense off the ball. He's the first try is basically a pick and go where he's gone smashing through. He's then the chip. I think the chip and chase is pretty. There's obviously always a bit of luck. It was an amazing first phase try, but the speed he's moving when he chips that ball is remarkable. It just kind of increasingly feels like a real privilege to watch him play.
You're right on the sheer numbers. Like, I've always said this about Finn Russell, that he makes so many mistakes. It's like, yes, but if you try literally everything you can possibly try on a rugby pitch in the space of 80 minutes, you're probably going to make a mistake. Like, it's less like Finn Russell, where he's trying everything outrageous that you could possibly think of. It's just he is doing every single thing in a game. But I actually kind of watched the brief bit of the post-match that Premier Sports had, and he was interviewed for Man of the Match, and he said, "Oh, I made a lot of mistakes today." And he wasn't flawless. He did make a couple of mistakes, and it's just so humble.
It just doesn't matter.
I hate using the word humble, but he's just like, I made a few mistakes, and he's just so relaxed the way he's talking about it. But yeah, I think the one that was really cool was, and you kind of said it, so I've got it written down here, is when it went to 30 points to 3. which is the one where he kind of picks it up around the fringes. He kind of dummies a kick. And you said at the time, like, okay, Dupont's starting to take the piss now, or something along those lines. And he's kind of picks it up around the fringes, slightly dummies a kick, slightly dummies a short ball, and then he just skips around a few defenders. The perfectly timed pass and the perfectly timed run from Entomac, just running onto the ball, just hits the space. It's one of those breaks where it looks like they, like, catching the ball, like, gets them like that kind of Mario Kart, like chevron accelerator type thing. Yeah. And then the kick off the left from Entomac, Ramos gets a perfect bounce. But that's just such a beautiful try. Without wanting to sound too, it's quite hard not to go into kind of full gushing hyperbole mode with this team. But some of the, I feel like if you start calling things beautiful, you get quite Stuart Barnesy. But yeah, it's hard not to with this team. Like, they were just sensational.
There's not, we were saying this before, it feels like there's genuinely not that much to say about this final. Like, they were amazing. Toulouse were, and actually looking back, they will maybe touch on Bordeaux briefly with some of their struggles, but they deserved it in hindsight. The first half, although they were miles clear, like, their defense was suffocating. They were all over the ball. Jack Willis was unbelievable. Like, the levels he's taken his play to. I know we've said it time and time again. It's just remarkable. And they were just totally dominant from the outset. And the scoreline doesn't flatter them in any way at all. It was just, physicality was off the scale. In the head, it was brilliant. Like, they managed the game superbly. And then those X Factor players, when it clicks, it's a joy to watch. I mean, we've got to touch on it. That just when you don't think you're dead and buried enough, you cough up a ball on the opposition try line. A load of guys are saying boot it off the pitch, and Malvaca goes, no, we're going the distance. And sure enough, they do. I mean, like, what more could kind of encapsulate how they're playing at the moment than that?
It was just, I think that we were saying that it's almost like, Bordeaux are going to knock this on at some point, aren't they? And lo and behold, it spills out a ruck. But yeah, there's just no other team, just the sheer confidence they're playing with. No other team is thinking, let's run it from here. We're 52-3 up. So I actually retweeted something from our account. Jack Willis, 76 minutes, 71 meters made, 6 defenders beaten. There's some dodge. I don't know what franchissement or course is, but yeah, 1 turnover, only 7 tackles, which is strange. But yeah, just another brilliant game for Willis. I think for us, who did we say was? Yeah, we said Willis should have been man of the match. We thought, yeah, it's just because both sides of the ball, he was, the carrying was brilliant. But Flamont was fantastic. Malvaca, we talk about the chip and chase for Dupont's try, but that comes off a kind of inside ball from Malvaca, doesn't it?
Flamont, we discussed it at the time. One, I think we both remarked on how much his carrying appears to have improved and how many carries he makes. But he's also so central to their offloading game. But he is invariably, particularly when, it's offloading kind of in close quarters, he is invariably the one on Dupont or Entomac's shoulder. And most of the time he's getting his massive mitts out the tackle and flipping it off to somewhere else, or at least looking. He's an incredible player.
I don't know if you know this, Rich, but he's got quite an interesting story. And he was actually once upon a time a fly half. Or actually for Loughborough University 5th 11. I don't know if you knew.
I think it was 6th 15.
It wasn't 6th. Come on. That's blatantly like a language thing, isn't it? Like, we'll chuck the Frenchie in the 5s, no one can understand him. Turns out he was pretty damn good. Yeah, I think my favourite try is which is your favourite try? I love Malvaca, so I think it's the chip and chase, because Malvaca is so quick to get around, and the inside ball to Malia is just beautiful before you even get to Dupont, like the link play.
Yeah, well, it probably is that one, but I think maybe I don't know. I think actually perhaps the Ramos one does it for me, just because the speed of ball, the fact it's that kind of triumvirate of Dupont, Entamat, Ramos,
Cool,
the chip off the left, it's the left foot kind of back inside as well. It's pretty close to perfection.
Just to wrap up on Toulouse, you mentioned Flamont's carrying being so physical. I think it's not just him. Like, we've seen so much improvement in Francois Cross's carrying and Willis's carrying. Like, they're just don't know what they're doing, but the coaching there has just been sensational. Just on Ube, incredibly disappointing from them. Like, nothing clicked. They looked so off the pace. I think it's very easy to get beaten by such a good team. To concede that many is not good. I said this as well, like, to score 3 points in a final, whether you lose 9-3 or 59-3, is also not good. But do you think they made the right decision with the Jalabert Tamafuna thing?
I think hoping there's no lasting damage to either of them, I think they made the right decision with Tamafuna. I think he actually held up okay in the scrum. He clearly wasn't quite at his bruising best, but we've seen some of the struggles they've had at tight heads. I think if he was available, they had to. And he wasn't his like a brilliant self, but he wasn't a liability by any stretch. I think, did we find out that Garcia was injured?
We saw the little graphic. So it's either hit Jalabert or Luku, isn't it?
Yeah. So close? I don't know. I can see why they did it. Hindsight's so easy because we all got so excited when we saw it, but it didn't work at all. Like, there was no pace, there was no spark, and maybe that just stems from the fact they couldn't get quick ball. But I think it's more like, we know how creative Jalabert is. We know he can kick brilliantly. Like, he can do things out of nowhere. His decision making wasn't quite there. I think in the end,
worth the gamble in my
work.
mind.
I think it probably was, because would it have made a difference? Like, we said before, their most important player in this game was going to be Luku. So you want him in his best position. He was pretty kind of manful, wasn't he? And he grafted really hard, particularly in that first half, and then it just didn't come together. But you're right. Like, what option have you got? It's a final. It's almost like a last roll of the dice. Maybe you play Luku at 10 and you lose by 15, and you say, well, should we have had Jalabert? Yeah, I just hope, because they're such an amazing team to watch, and they've beaten. I know it wasn't quite full strength, but they've beaten a very good Toulouse side. They've taken apart some brilliant teams, and when it does click, they are right up there with Toulouse in terms of kind of attacking intensity and flair. I just hope it's not the sort of thing that there's going to be blokes scarred from that. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, can you think of any final in any sport where the only sort of knockout game I can think of a team getting panned that badly was when Brazil lost to Germany like 6-1 all those years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope they've got some good signings coming in for next year. Some good, like, heavy, level-headed signings, and I think that puts them in good stead.
Right, and then I think we're kind of done on the top 14. There's not much else to say. But next up is a little interview with Steve Cummins, which was really cool, real awesome for us. One of the first players we met on a weekend where we fell in love with French rugby, which we dive into with Steve. So that is coming up next.
Cool. Right, we're delighted to have our second ever guest on the Rosbif Rugby podcast. We're joined by Melbourne Rebels, Scarlet, Section Paloise, and soon to be Dragons second row, Steve Cummins. Steve, welcome to Rosbif Rugby. How's it all going?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. It's going well. It's enjoying a little bit of downtime in between seasons, and back home in Sydney with the family, which is nice. So yeah, it's good. Nice little refresh.
Yeah, nice. You were saying it's not long before you're launching back into a pretty sturdy Welsh pre-season. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I just bracing myself for it now. Enjoying the time off while it lasts. But yeah, about a week and a half, sort of 8 to 10 days time, I'll be back in the thick of it all.
That's not a particularly long turnaround, is it? Certainly, if you had you been in the top 14 final and you were going into that, that would have been a pretty tight turnaround.
It is, yeah. It's a strange one because I mean, both teams sort of, well, when I say both teams, the Dragons have got a 4-week holiday policy, but they finished a week before us, so I'll be at that 3-week mark, and they were pretty good about it. To be fair, they did say if you wanted an extra week, let us know. But I sort of think it's probably best to turn up on day one and meet the guys and sort of try and make a good first impression. So yeah, I'll happily get back. I didn't play too much at the back end of the season, so I'm not feeling too bad.
Nice. And for the back end of the season, obviously the French rugby season has finally concluded after. I mean, it feels like a long time watching. I can't imagine what it's like as a player with pre-season built in. Did you catch? Have you seen any of the top 14 finals since you've been in Australia?
Yeah, I didn't watch it live just due to the time zone. I woke up and watched the highlights, and geez, what a game! I was a little bit shocked seeing the score at first, but then watching it back, I mean, yeah, they're a hell of a team to lose. To be fair, I think pretty well deserved. No surprise. I thought they'd win. The surprise more so the scoreline. Didn't think they'd win by that margin, but yeah, that's a pretty good team there, isn't it? Pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, it was I was watching it. We watched it together and Rob's on Friday, and yeah, I think slightly aghast at points at just how much of a pasting it turned out. Yeah, it was quite something. Do you think anyone was expecting that sort of disparity in the scores? Like, are they? You've played and known those teams quite a bit, or is it just red hot on the night?
Yeah, even my mates in Australia that I was with, they said you don't even really see that scoreline in the top and bottom sides playing one another. It's a tough one. I mean, obviously, I don't know. You never really know. Finals football, maybe Bordeaux played their final a week or two beforehand, and obviously having to go through without the week off as opposed to Toulouse is a tough one. But yeah, I definitely didn't see 50 odd points being the difference, especially right through to the last minute, full field tries in the 80th minute and things like that. That's just, yeah, they're a different beast.
They were just toying with them by the end, weren't they? That was just real taking the piss.
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt for them a bit, Bordeaux, but I mean, yeah, whether you lose by 2 or 50, I mean, it's never easy, but yeah, that was tough to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I don't think anyone quite saw that. Yeah, as we were kind of talking before. So obviously you're moving on to or going back to Wales shortly, but you've been with Poe for the last 4-5 years.
Yeah, it's four seasons, but the first season that I was there was a medical joker, so it was for a 3.5 month period, 12 or so games, and then whilst I was there, I signed a 3-year deal, but a bit convoluted. I'd already signed for the Rebels, so I went back to the Rebels for 1 year and then came back. So I played the last 3 seasons unbroken. So yeah,
okay.
That was COVID as well, so that actually kind of worked out pretty well that you ended up at the Rebels when there was actually some rugby on.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it was a strange old time, but yeah, it was lucky. It's sort of Daniel Ramsey, the Kiwi lock, at the time he'd broken his arm and they needed someone for 3 months, and I was sort of on my way back, and just with the staggered seasons, I had 3 months, 4 months up my sleeve, and it just worked out. I'd always wanted to play French rugby, and I'd sort of looked from the outside in, and when the opportunity came up, I jumped at it. So yeah, timing wise, I mean, it was a strange time with COVID and everything, but it all sort of worked out perfectly.
How does that come about then? Is it kind of someone gets in contact with your agent or your agent's aware that Poe need a second row medical joker, and therefore, or the call goes out to various agents, and then you get hooked up, or is it something you're actively looking for? Or
Yeah,
I
as you
guess
say,
being at Scarlet's probably helped. Being in Europe, I guess, kind of you're a bit more on the French radar a bit.
yeah. Look, in honesty, I don't know how much of the USC and all the Pro 14 as it was that they watch.
Yeah.
We were like a little bit lucky at the time that the forwards coach was Paul Tito, who'd played at Cardiff Blues, and I think that he maybe had some touch points there in Wales that he kept in contact with. But I was sort of, I was, it was really weird actually. I was on my way out of the Scarlets. On the Tuesday, I'd actually been named to play for the Scarlets on the Saturday, and on a Wednesday, I was on a flight out of London to Po. Like, it all just moved super quick. And I sat and watched the game that I was supposed to be playing in Paul Tito's living room with him. Like, it just was so bizarre. But yeah, basically, as I say, so the last trial match before the season started, Daniel Ramsey, the lock, he broke his arm. They knew he was going to be out for 3 months, and yeah, I guess my French agent got in contact with my Aussie and UK agent, said, look, Poe's interested. They've seen his footage. Basically, it's like a shortlisting process. So they say, right, looking at you, let you know tomorrow or whatever. And so they make their calls, they do their due diligence, they look into all the sort of injury things they want to know about, one thing and the other. And then, yeah, they say, right, we want to move. This is the terms. We're about to start our season. So I asked for another week or two, and they said, no, we want you here on Wednesday. And that was it. So ripped the Band-Aid, got over there, and, you know, it was the best way to do it, because I just sort of didn't have any time to think or worry or anything. I was just there and playing, and yeah, it was great. Really good experience.
Yeah, I've heard that they're pretty quick turnaround times in French rugby. If they want you, they kind of get you pretty much straight away, and you don't give it as kind of do it now or never. Like, it's kind of a 24-hour ultimatum type thing.
Absolutely, yeah. There was no negotiation. It was, no, you'll be here, and this is your flight. Okay, then see you soon.
And you said,
go on,
go from it. No,
I think we're gonna like Poe. Back then, to kind of the team that you're leaving, there's been a bit of evolution over the last few years, I guess, or certainly the last year was much more promising season in terms of not scrapping it out down the bottom. Sebastian Piccarone is now in charge, kind of building a bit of a blueprint. How have you found your time at Poe? What are the big changes? Are Poe looking upwards, and are they kind of done with the relegation scrapping years?
I'd love to think so. The thing with Poe, in my experience, and look, we'll use that first COVID season as an example. Poe, up until Christmas, historically are always really good. You know, like that first game that I was there, we beat Montpellier in Montpellier with a penalty try in the 80th minute, like just absolute scenes. We beat Agen, we beat Bordeaux, whatever it was. I think after 5 or 6 rounds, we were in the top 3, and I was like, "How good's this?" You know. But then by the time I'd left in round 12, we were in 10th or 11th, and you know the rain came, and I think at the time there was a bit of a perception, rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure, but they sort of played a bit too much, and it was at some points their strength, and then at other times could be their Achilles heel. But anyway, I mean, French rugby being French rugby, I got back to Australia, and I was in Sydney doing the COVID hotel isolation thing, and I got a call, and they said, "Look, they've just sacked the coaches." And, I just signed a 3-year deal, and by the time I'd hit the ground on the other side of the flight, the coaches were gone. So, I mean, that was always going to be a complicated season. Then they didn't bring any new coaches in. They sort of brought the assistants into head coach roles, and there were kind of guys who were a huge turnover. Something like 16 or 17 players had left by the time I got back the following season, and Seb coming in and things like that. So I mean, that sort of disruption is always going to make for a bit of a tough run. But I mean, they got a bonus point in the last minute of the last game to survive that year. So that was sort of a little bit too fine. First year under Seb, first year I came back, we were decent. We're in with a fight for the finals, but then with about 4 or 5 weeks to go, we couldn't make the finals, but we also couldn't be relegated. So we were sort of somewhere in that 10th, 9th or 10th position. Last year was a tough one. Obviously, we were right in the mixer for a long period, super stressful. And then this year, but I mean, you guys, you see it week in, week out. Look at top 14, like the margins are so fine. What's the difference between a team that comes 7th and 11th? Like it's 2 or 3 points. It's a win. It's a win away from home or a loss that you probably should win, something like this. So, yeah, I mean, back to the question, in terms of the trajectory, it's super positive. It's a young squad. There's a lot of talent. There's some good retention, some good recruitment. Looking from the outside in now, I think they'll do really well. And I hope that, within the next year or so, they're challenging for that at least top 8 to play Heineken Cup and, maybe top 6 and play some finals footy. But, as I alluded to, top 14, man, it's crazy. Like, look at Montpellier. Who would say that they'd be playing the barrage game? You can't say anything with certainty in my experience.
Yeah, I think slight full disclosure, I am a Section Paloise fan.
Love it.
So I've I follow them pretty closely, but we have met before, the three of us, or we have met you. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I'm aware of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. For the listeners, we've spoken quite a bit about my 30th birthday weekend, ending up in Bayonne and then Po. But on a night out, we bumped into you guys in Po, kind of cruising around some bars. Yeah. And for a little bit of context, how tall are you, Steve?
202, 203 centimeters, so 6'7", thereabouts, 6'7", 6'8".
And so big bloke, rugby boy, obviously kind of thick as teak. And one of our mates kind of, I think, said something along the lines of, don't worry if you can't keep up with us, but we go pretty hard on the booze, and we're just like looking up at you as a beanpole. Luckily, you laughed. Like, I don't know how you didn't hit him, but that was. But yeah, you guys. Is that kind of a weekly occurrence? Just a little bit of a sidetrack. But is it kind of out on the beers? Or I know you were with Gavin Stark, so kind of a few of the Brits players were Aussie Kiwis as well. So was that kind of, I mean, there's loads of them in top 14. Do you kind of show them around Po after the game, sort of thing?
Yeah, it depends. Depending where they're from, and for example, Lyon or someone, they'll be on a flight after the game. The Parisian teams, they'll be out pretty quickly after. It just depends on who they are and what their travel arrangements are. Some teams stay on, and generally the foreigners will catch up, whether you know them or not. You become pretty friendly because the common language and things breaks down the barriers pretty quickly. But sometimes, in honesty, not that often, unless it's like a close friend that you've organised to go out with. You don't really come across one another on town too much. Usually if teams stay on, they'll stay in their hotel or one thing or another. There's a few stories around that, but anyway, that season we actually were out all the time, and it was, we were maybe a bit too much, but the last 2 years it's sort of wound down, and it was
that would have been the year, just like kind of when things opened up after the pandemic, right? So
yeah, exactly. And as I said, turnover, 16, 17 guys out, new team, getting to know each other, bonding, winning early on, those sort of games. Also the Brits game, that was the end of a 10-game block. So we'd played the first 10 games that year, and there was something like a week or two off. And, after 10 weeks on the bounce, and you get a little taste of a break, the boys are flying into it. So we would have been just as excited as you.
Yeah,
I think my last memory of that evening, I think I ducked out quite early, Rob. In the end, I couldn't quite take the pace, but I seem to remember one of the bars. It might have been the one where our mate decided he was gonna call you all out, but just the mother of all fights kicking off behind us and the bar getting closed.
Yeah, sounds about right. Welcome to Perth.
Yeah. Well, on that,
I was going to say
gonna...
Zach Henry, the English 10. He had a big crew of English boys out there as well. So,
yeah, we
I
bumped
remember.
into them in the shop.
Yeah.
One of them,
Yeah.
we were just like buying some stuff, and just some bloke in English was like, "Oh, that 10's a bit crap, isn't he?" And I was like, "Oh, right, he must know him. Like, there's no way he's saying that." But yeah, was he a bit of a ringleader, Zach, in terms of nights out on the town? I've heard like he's
one of the
I don't
best.
know whether he's all chat, but I've heard a few interviews with him.
No, he's the goods. He's the goods. I can confirm from a very, very close source. Mate, he's worth his weight in gold on and off the field. Great bloke. And yeah, real good time. Real good time. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, you can read between the lines.
his group of, let's say, we did bump in because I think that group, it was a massive group who had gone out to watch him. There were loads of them. And they were absolutely flying when we saw them at sort of 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So
yeah,
probably boded well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what then? As I say, we were there, I think, in Po for about 24 hours. But what does, if for anyone who's coming out to Po, probably one of the slightly less heralded destinations to visit. Amazing stadium though. I thought the Stade is stunning.
Yeah, it is a great place.
What does what would a good weekend look like? Where are you eating? Where are you visiting, drinking? What would be your recommendations?
Yeah, as you say, mate, it's a hidden gem. There's the beauty of it is you're an hour from Brits, so you're an hour from the ocean and stunning coastline and beaches. You're also 40 minutes to an hour from the Pyrenees. So in the winter when the snow comes, you can ski. You can do hikes, you've got these beautiful, not just in the winter, summer as well, beautiful views and hikes. 2 hours to Bordeaux, 2 hours to Toulouse, big cities, good airports, transfer links and all these sort of things. It's actually a hidden gem. In terms of like eating and things, it's a small town at its heart. It's not a London, it's not a Sydney. You don't have oceans and oceans of choice, but equally, there's some really nice French cuisine and things like this. Few hidden gems. It's the kind of place that you need to know someone. You get the recommendations and you turn up, and then you realize, okay, this is I would never have come here, but now I get it. This is how to do it. So yeah, it was great by the end to sort of have a better lay of the land. When I came in COVID, most things were closed, so people were selling me the dream, saying, "No, trust us. This is actually really good," and I was like, I don't know. It's there's not much going on, but in fairness, as soon as I came back, it was a whole new world and everything was open and people were around. And yeah, it's I'll miss it. I'll miss it for sure. It was a great life there, and it's, as the small town vibe and charm. It's quiet and it's slow, and no one's in any rush to get anything done. And once I got over that sort of frustration at first, and I started to appreciate it. It's actually a really nice life. It's it's a great place.
I think the reason that I fell in love with it, or we fell in love with it, was it's properly one of those places that the whole town is at the game. Like it's population's about 50,000 people, but the stadium's like 16,000. Like that's a good chunk of the town. I know it's kind of represents the surrounding region a bit, but
correct. Yeah, correct.
Just like the whole vibe, and it does feel like everyone's there, and it is that kind of a little bit of an outpost, which I love. I love the fact that people come from the surrounding area to come and watch their team and what they represent. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, it is good. It is good, and the team or the club itself has a sort of a regional focus on sort of representing the people of the region and what it stands for, and one thing and another. So that was quite cool across the 3 years to sort of. They take training out to the regions, into the mountains, and you're training at this tiny little at this tiny little ground with potholes and things, but this incredible Pyrenees mountain view in the background, and 7 people and a dog in the crowd. But it's so cool. Like it was very unique and charming place.
And then just in terms of the region, I guess tying back to before we got sidetracked about our night out, the club feels like it's going in directions. I think it was, as a fan, it was quite frustrating that the kind of top six and Heineken Cup was there for the Champions Cup, is it?
Yeah.
Investor. It was there for the taking and kind of perhaps fluffed the lines a little bit, but it's a young team going places. It feels like there's a lot of young players coming through. You've obviously got good representation on the France tour, some really good representation in the under-20s. Is that kind of, do you get that sense of the club picking up young players from the surrounding region? Is there a good pathway building from the academy to the full side?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion and my experiences, I'd say that there's quite a focus on the younger players. I might misquote it, but there's a blueprint of the club, and basically they want X amount of players in the full international side by a year or two from now. They want X amount of players in the under-20s each year. So there is a focus on that, and there is a sort of a pathway that they're building to bring people through. Yeah, I mean, Seb obviously is a former under-20s coach himself, so he knows that pathway really well. And that's probably there's a double advantage to that. One of them is that a lot of the players who have come through these really good under-20s years in the previous couple of years where they've won the championships and things, he's quite close to these players. And from a recruitment perspective, as Section becomes a better team and wins more games, I think you'll start to see these players, it being a more attractive proposition for them, because maybe in years gone by, from all I heard, all reports, players felt as if coming to Section, they may have been giving up their ambitions at making the national team and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, guys like Emilian Gaeton and Tio Atisogbe and Hugo Aradou, the lot coming through, these kind of players, I think is great for the club because they're going to start attracting other players to come along. And, it's like a snowball. The more you start to win and you've got players in the national team and other guys want to jump on board, then it starts to sort of breed success. So, yeah, I think it definitely bodes well for the future. There's no doubt about that.
I think the more that we've watched this year, like the real find for us from watching it has got to be Teo Atisogbe. Like the guy can just do absolutely everything, it seems. Do you think, like, because he was obviously eligible to play the under-20s, is he going to be starting for France? Were we looking at 100 cap international here? Like, he's got the complete game.
Got it all, yeah. He's got it all. Look, I hope so. Short answer, I hope so. He's got it all. I mean, the finer points to that is obviously things like injury selection, if the pathway's there for him. But, I mean, playing and training alongside him, he's got it all. He's Dan Robson, actually, our 9, he called in the preseason. He just said, mate, this kid's incredible. He said he's he's a top 14 player, even though at the time he was 18 or something. And then sure enough, he just went on and just kept the most impressive thing was the consistency. To play 1 or 2 games is possible as a young guy, but just to have a season like that and against good teams, 2 tries away from home against Toulouse at full strength and things like this, he fully deserves his opportunity. And I'd love to see him capped soon. I'm not too sure around the whole young player protection thing. Don't want to throw them in too soon, but yeah, there's a few good young guys coming through. That Bordeaux winger who's super quick, and it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. That's for sure.
Yeah, because I guess he's had pretty similar. He played a lot of rugby, and similarly, Emilian Gaeton kind of last season. So the season before last was kind of top try scorer in the top 14, aged 19, 20, played a load of games. Like they're both just so consistent for, as you say, for such youngsters. I guess we wanted to ask you about Hugo Aradou, guy in your position, still got a lot of growing to do, it would seem. Like he needs to fill out a bit, but can you tell us a little bit about him and kind of his prospects and what sort of player he is?
Great kid, mate. As a start, great kid. Works super hard. He would have been about 90 kilos when I turned up, and he's probably 103, and he's out there in this like land of giants. There's these Miafus and these guys that are 130 kilos, Skelton 150 kilos, and he's just a work rate player, but he's growing into his body. And so I think he's got a really good base around his set pieces, really good. The line out, the kickoffs, he makes 1 billion tackles. He hits 100 rucks. He's got the skills. He's a good support player. He makes breaks off offloads and things like that. And then I think as he sort of puts on a bit of weight and he's working really hard, they've obviously got him in the slipstream now. So I think, once he puts on another 5 or 10 kilos, he starts dominating his collisions as well. I mean, the sky's the limit for someone like that.
Yeah, it seems like,
ask.
Go on.
No, I was going to, no, you finish on Arady. I've got one more.
I was going to say, it just seems like there's a little bit of an opening in the France side in the second row, the kind of age profile of the guys that have played there, some of the form of the other guys that have played, there feels like there's someone to, as you say, just ride in the slipstream behind Flamont and Miafu as the kind of third or fourth choice. So fingers crossed Hugo. But I think, Rich, you were about to ask a question about a bloke at the other end of his career.
Yeah, absolutely. How was, it was probably one of them. They've recruited brilliantly last season with, obviously Robson before, pod favourite Joe Simmons, MBE, who had a cracking season. But how was having one Sam Whitelock in the Section Paloise squad for, I know it wasn't a huge amount of time, but I think that was arguably probably the most eye-catching bit of recruitment last year or this season in the top 14. What's obviously a guy in your position? What's that like?
So good, man. Firstly, as a player, he's still so good. I was sitting there thinking, man, he's still like, he could keep going, for 5 years. His body is a little bit beaten up, as you'd expect, that many top class games and in the way he plays, but he looks after himself well. He's always available. He's tough. But then off the field or on the field, but in the mentoring space, he's probably forgotten more about rugby than I'll ever know. He's just seen everything. He's won everything. He's been in such good programs, and he comes out with these gems. He would just drop a knowledge bomb, a wisdom bomb. And I just think, I actually had a chat with him at the end of the season, and I said, I kind of wish that I was a Hugo under someone like you when I was 20, like to have that time over and to learn from someone like that is so rare, like the chance to just cross paths and be able to pick someone's brain. And even he grabbed like Reece Hewitt, who's, fairly established sort of 26-year-old player, and he'd grab him and go in and do video reviews of his game and, put his arm around him and give little gems here and there. He was, his effect on the squad around standards and leadership and how to win and things like that just was, it was incredible to see up close.
It's amazing. Although a pretty tough start for him. I think he didn't win his first 5 top 14 games. I was like, oh no, what's going on? This is like Gareth Bale.
He wouldn't have lost 5 games in the last 10 years before that,
Yeah.
I think it was a bit of a tough learning curve for him having to get used to not winning everything. But no, he was good. I think it's on.
Is he sticking around? Is he kind of moving straight back to New Zealand? Because his brother, I think in the same week that he announced retirement, I think Luke extended his contract. So
yeah.
Is he going to stick around and mentor Hugo and a few of the other guys? Joel Kapoku coming through as well, which is a great signing.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I put it this way: he's not short of offers around the world. I don't know what he'll do. I don't know if he knows what he'll do just yet, but there's a few knocks at his door, as you can imagine. He's got a lot to offer and a lot of people who would love to have him. So what he does next, I'm not too sure, but whatever it is, he'll be an asset to whatever he does.
You're not taking him as a line-out coach to the Dragons, would you?
Oh, mate, I'd love to. I don't think I've got enough pull, but I could try.
And just we've appreciate we're nearly at time, but obviously the Dragons, the pre-season start of next week, made some, obviously yourself, but I think Harry Wilson from the Wallabies is also heading there. Back row from Moana Pacifico, he's been tearing up. I forget his name. So some good signings. How are kind of things shaping up? Have you had any conversations with the coaches, or is it just going to be launched straight in and work it out from there?
Yeah, well, I'm quite lucky. We actually played against them the last 2 years in Europe, so I've crossed paths with some of my old mates who play there now, and also the coach Di Flanagan. He was at the Scarlets when I was there, so yeah, I've had a good little bit of dialogue, and they're sort of in their project. They're at a point where they want to sort of, how to say, turn the expectations and standards around and try and build a winning culture and things like that. So yeah, it's an exciting time, as you say, some really good recruitment, and yeah, I'm excited to get over there. It's sort of early doors, so I'm not really sure what to expect, but I'm excited to get feet on the ground and meet everyone, and yeah, hopefully be a part of something pretty special.
Imagine you're looking forward to getting back playing. You've had a pretty rough time,
Yeah,
long time out as well this season. So it'd just be nice to be back playing, I imagine.
that's
Are you hoping for another, section are in the Challenge Cup again this year? Are you hoping for a return in the Challenge Cup group stage, maybe?
I wouldn't say no. Yeah, it came up a few times in the end of season reviews and things. A lot of the coaches saying we'll likely see you next year anyway. So, yeah, hopefully. I mean, a free trip back to Po would be great, but who knows? Who knows? Would be a bit weird, but yeah, you know what it's like. Would be fun.
Brilliant. Well, Steve, thanks so much for.
Might have to organise a trip for the three of us to meet back up there again.
Definitely, mate. I'm keen.
Absolutely. And if not, Rodney Parade, and we'll see how we go in Newport. Might be a slightly
Yeah.
spicier proposition.
Hey, why not?
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, very best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your off season. And yeah, best of luck for the Dragons. We'll certainly be keeping an eye out. Yeah, and stay in touch.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the chat, guys.
Cheers, Steve. Take care,
Cheers,
mate. Bye. Okay, well, the final petty fours of the regular top 14 season. Obviously, don't worry, we will be back next week to chew the fat on the internationals, the under 20s, and possibly another very special guest as well.
Internationals are on Sky, which is really cool. I saw that on one of the adverts.
Was
all
that
of
late...
the summer series. So not only England, New Zealand, which we knew about, but Ireland, South Africa is on Sky. There's another one, and also I noticed they did have Argentina and France. I imagine they won't show the Uruguay game. I'll be amazed, but
yeah,
to have the two Argentina tests, which, as we kind of said before when we talked about the England tour, it's quite an agreeable time. It's kind of like 10 p.m. on a Saturday, which is quite cool.
Nice way to close out your Saturdays. Yeah, I hadn't realised that. I thought we were going to struggle to watch them. That's brilliant news. Any last petty fours, Rob?
Or just touching on the international stuff. I very briefly had one eye on. I know you were playing cricket because I was triple screening at one point. Also had the first half of the France v Spain under 20s game, and literally turned on 2 minutes in, and France are in the 5 meter line, and Hugo Royce has thrown an out the back pass, like behind him, that is a kind of double miss pass, lands perfectly in I think it was Boisberi, then popped it off to Desperez inside 3 minutes. It was just a ridiculous. I'd be amazed if it doesn't end up on some of the social media stuff. It was such a good pass. Couple of tries with Barnaby Massa, the maul, and up front they did really well. They got a penalty try. Joe Quere-Careba was playing well, back rower. There's one bit where they nearly score straight from a kickoff that is just ridiculous from Quere-Careba, and Carbonneau didn't quite have the gas, and there's a bit of a knock on. But I only watched the first half. Spain won 4 turnovers at breakdown. But yeah, in the end, France unsurprisingly ran out fairly comfortable winners. That they're not missing. They don't need Matis Castro Ferreira for that one, but I'm sure they will for the latter stages. But some pretty positive signs, and a few names that we've kind of we're expecting to see do some stuff. We're playing pretty well. So France's next game is on Thursday at 3:30 against New Zealand, which is cool.
And that's all on Rugby Pass, right?
It's all on Rugby Pass TV, yeah.
So as you very pointedly highlighted, that one-off login you created to watch the England-Japan game, you can get a little bit more value out of.
Yeah, exactly. And then Petit Fours, Rich, have you got anything or?
Not masses, to be honest. My main one was just Antoine Dupont surfing the crowd, looking very relaxed. And Antoine Dupont's amazing skills under a highball iPhone.
Yeah.
That is literally it for me this week.
Have
I
you
know there's
seen
been a few transfers which you might
Well,
want
have
to
you
get
seen,
into.
just on Toulouse, have you seen the contract extension announcement for Piatto Malvaca?
Yes, I have seen that
Brennus
actually.
shield in the middle, club president with a cigar, Piatto Malvaca with a cigar. I think he's got the ski goggles on his head. Yeah, extended till, I don't know, some point miles in the future because
2029 or something. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, the transfers were interesting. I think the big news this week was the Stad ones. So Joe Jonas, a player that we've seen in the flesh at Biarritz and monitoring Pro Day Dirt, is a really good player. They've kind of feels like they've signed quite a lot of flair players. So, you know, they've lacked a bit in attack this season. So they've signed Joe Jonas, brilliant fullback. Samuel Ezeala, who's electric winger from Po, Spanish. Rafael Costa Storti, record try scoring season for Bezier and Pro Day Deux, Portuguese international. So that's really cool. Johan Tanga, really good player. Louis Carbonell, who is, in my mind, an upgrade from Joris Gons as an attacking 10. They've also signed Louis Forsans from Montpellier as well, who's was a couple of years ago a promising young 10, seems to have been hampered a little bit. An interesting one, Thomas Dolagaray, who has played 10 for Bayonne, kind of second fiddle to Cami Lopez. I think he kicked the equalising points away at Munster in the Champions Cup. Pretty good player. He's moved from Bayonne to Biarritz. So I didn't think that was the done thing.
Biarritz have made some. Now they've kind of had their financial future, if not secured, then guaranteed to get another year in Pro Day there. They've made some big signings this week, haven't they? Or confirmed. So he's going. Cornel Dupree from Toulon. And there's one or two others in there as well, which escape me.
Arthur Bonneval. Kylian Jaminet, brother of, is fullback for Nevers. He's been really good this season as well. Yeah, the ones that... So today, I didn't realise this, but there's actually a transfer window in the top 14, which I think finishes today. Van have not made a lot of signings, which is concerning. They have signed Filippo Nkosi. That's cool.
I saw
brother
that, yeah.
of brother of the geezer Jasur Tursova. But if you go on all.rugby, our favourite website, you can see all of the transfers. I just want to pick up on a couple. Bordeaux have signed Johnny Gray, good player. Lockie Swinton from the Waratahs, big back rower. Timo Mathieu, who's the number 8 from Biarritz, who I think is absolutely brilliant. I think he was class in that game we saw them, but he's done loads as well. Youngster. They've signed Joey Carberry.
Yeah.
I think
that's been quite a while in the making.
And Rohan Jansi van Rensburg. Some big signings there.
Some good signings, I think.
There's a lot of normally we're used to kind of seeing some fly half carousel, but there seems to be a prop carousel going on where everyone's kind of exchanging props. Clermont, couple of really good signings for me. Regis Montagne, tight head prop from Grenoble. Barnaby Massa, hooker from Grenoble. Thomas Sate, a second row from Bayonne, who I love. Lucas Tozan as well from Toulouse. So Clermont beefing up their pack, as well as Michael Alalatoa doing a swap for Rabah Slimani. But they are losing Georgie Berrier, who's just made the France squad. He's going to Perpignan. And they are losing Daniel Bibi Baziwu, who's gone to Po. So there's a bit of
musical props.
Yeah, musical props. I think that was kind of the main stuff. Montpellier, in amongst the madness of their criminals, essentially, they have also signed, we mentioned this earlier, Nicolas Martins is a good player. The fly half stocks, they've got Domingo Miotti from Oyonnax, Thomas Vincent from Agen, who I think is a really good player, kicked the winning goal in that game that we saw in front of the Sapiac Ultras under a lot of drumming, and obviously Mados Tamboy as well, another good player. The other one with my Po hat on that I saw, so Po has signed an academy player from Biarritz who's an 18-year-old scrum half called Gabriel Elisaud, who I can only assume, because Elisaud is actually a Basque name, and he is from Biarritz, I can only assume is the son of Jean-Baptiste Elisaud. So
that's very cool.
Just to add to their scrum half stocks of players whose dads also played 9 for France, with Souverby, he's in the under-20s. But yeah, if you want to nose out on top 14 transfers and Pro D2 transfers, all.rugby, as ever, is your place to go. A lot of fun to be had there this morning for any badgers out there.
Excellent. Alrighty, I think we're at time. So in the week that Toulouse secured their 23rd, keep me honest, Bouclier de Brennus, and the week that Steve Cummins very kindly came on to join us, we're gonna wrap up. We'll be back, we say, next week to discuss all things internationals, and we might even have another guest on if you're lucky. So thanks for joining us. I've been Richard. That has been Rob. We've been Rosbiff Rugby. Follow us on all the usual things, you know where they are: TikTok, Instagram. Subscribe, like, rate, but only if it's a good one. And we'll catch you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.